reason why we talk past each other, though, too, because we're not having the same conversations, and I think we talked about this on our podcast, is I refer to them as believers. So it could be any religion, right? Just easier just to say believers, right? So believers tend to be more invested in moral absolutism, whereas like the red pill, at least from my experience anyways, is more about factual absolutism. So what happens is when you get a debate together, we're going to debate together, and we're going to say, is God real, is God not, the red pill is leading men astray, that kind of stuff. It sounds like on the surface of it, it sounds like there's going to be some sort of like real, a good conversation come out of this. But the problem is we end up talking past each other. And the reason why we do that is because the believers tend to have a different goal than people who like than empiricists, right? So when I'm having this conversation with somebody, I'm saying, the red pill is not a ideology, it's not a religion, it's a praxeology is what it is, yes. And that's the best way I can describe it, right? Because it's based in empiricism. Whereas if you're going to talk to believers and you have empiricists and believers, what happens is the believers tend to want to figure out whether you're a good person or you're a bad person.
Yeah.
Is it right or is it wrong? It's about best practices.
They call us degenerates.
Right. Exactly. Because you're discussing things that sound like you're endorsing these things, because just because I can discuss the worst atrocities in the world, that doesn't mean I endorse them. It doesn't mean that I'm on board with this. I want to understand how we got to that position.
On a certain topic.
And it doesn't have to be atrocities. It could be anything, right? It could just be like especially things that people are really invested in, such as marriage, such as sex, such as having babies, such as solving their reproductive problems, right? So what happens is you have these believers who their goal is to figure out what the best practices are, what should we do, how do we solve the problem, and that's a noble goal, don't get me wrong, and understanding what we ought to do. But the red pill's not about oughts. It's about what is, what is right here in my hands. And I'm reminded of that painting by Leonardo da Vinci where it's like Socrates is pointing to the sky, and it's like I think it's Aristotle like pointing to the ground, right? So it's like what's here and what should we do kind of thing. And that's really when we have this conversation. That's really what we're talking about. And so what happens is the moral absolutists will say, well, those red pill guys are sons of bitches because they believe or they don't believe in marriage, and they don't believe in a nuclear family. They don't open on his end and closed on her end. That's kind of thing. They think about those. They think about those things, and then they look at that and they go and they say, well, this is not according to my religion. This is not best practices, right? So therefore, you're a sinner and you're going to hell. As opposed to the guy who's on the opposite side, who's on the empirical side, so going, well, they're not really interested in truth. They're not really interested in an objective version of truth. And the problem with that is without the both of those, we don't have a really kind of functioning society, because you have to know what's true before you can decide what the best practices are from that person.
You have to know the facts.